the next portion of the book, Remembering Earth Mission, Chapter 19, The Journey Begins. It was a few more days before Pam called Jerry. She was quite excited about how the processes were going. Hi, Jerry, this is Pam. How are your studies going? Well, they seem to be getting easier. I've turned a project into one of my professors, but I have a lot of apprehension about the legal processes from the rape. Being targeted is unfair. It's cruel, I know, but I'm not the only woman who has dealt with it. But I am so angry. Yeah, whenever you need me, I'm here, Pam offered. Thanks, I know that. I don't know how I could do this without you and Rory. My parents, of course, have been wonderful, but they still have a hard time knowing how to help me. What have you been up to? Pam could hardly contain her excitement. Well, I'm ready to do some work with you. Really? Jerry's voice lifted. When can we start? What will be involved? I mean, how do we do this? Jerry's voice betrayed her excitement and apprehension. Well, first, we need some quiet place and time when we will not be disturbed. I'll work with a team of spiritual healers. They'll examine your energy to locate distorted frequencies, anything that is not in harmony with your basic core frequency. The requests that I'm putting together are intended to permit those healers to go after the distorted vibrations. Thinking of it more like clearing various energy fields, like combing tangles out of your hair. To help Jerry understand, Pam said, remember how you said you felt calmer when I was around, even before you knew me? Yes. Well, several times I used a shortened version of what we will be doing. You could feel how it cleared those uncomfortable feelings and left you in a lighter place, Pam asked. That's right. Something changed, and I did feel better, Jerry acknowledged. So that is what we'll be doing, but more deeply. My spiritual team suggests that we do 2 sessions over the next month and then see what we might address in another 2. And Pam laughed. Oh, you will have some homework to do. Jerry manufactured a groan. After those 2, I suspect we'll do specific work involving other negative patterns. Probably the rape incident will be part of those. When do we get started? Jerry asked, feeling very hopeful. Well, I want you to talk it over with your parents. Then all we need is a quiet place. Of course, privacy and a comfortable place where you can lie down while we work. I want to have lots of objects of nature around you to provide steady vibrational force field. Rory would like to be there or have someone with us to make sure you're okay throughout the session. Is it going to be dangerous? Jerry responded with a little apprehension. Oh no, laughed Pam. Betty wants you to be supported, as so do I. You know that the places I love best are out in nature. The park is too public. Maybe we could go up in one of the mountains by the pines and lake, Jerry suggested. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Do you know of a place? Pam was excited. Sure. How would Sunday afternoon work for you? Be perfect, said Pam. What time? Well, if we leave by 9 in the morning, we will have the best part of the day to work. Jerry, do you want to ask Rory, or is there someone else? Oh, no, Rory's the one. And yes, I'll ask him, laughed Jerry. Another thing, Pam interjected, I don't want you to drive. For a short time after each session, you may feel like staying in a very detached space, and I want you to be free to do that and be taken care of. Sounds great, Jerry giggled. Since you don't have a car, and I may want to float, Rory is the candidate for the driver. By the way, Jerry added, I have put my notes from our talk into my computer. I think they are accurate, but I'd like you to look them over when you have time. Great, I'd love to do that. See you on Sunday. Chapter 20. Gaia calls. The week had been hectic for Bob. At times like this, the mountains were his promise of peace. As he took the sharp curves, he stayed focused on his driving. When the road straightened out, the urgency of reconnecting to the planet floated back in his mind. Once again, he became the commander. There was no way he would allow the insanity of humankind to take away the beauty and healing powers of these hills, trees, animals, meadows. His armies were the rocks, the trees, the water, the air, and he called to them, "No energy of fear or destruction can remain on the planet. Whatever it takes to negate those vibrations, I command that it be so. I command that the boundaries around our mother, the earth, all of her creations, and all of her inhabitants prevent any invasion. I command her healing now." Maybe it was only a game he was playing, but the words came with such urgency and clarity. There was certainly no harm done in speaking them. He had decided to go to the same spot where he had camped 2 weekends ago. It had been glorious, and very few people found their way there. It felt like the top of the world. He knew exactly where he wanted to stand and reaffirm the vision. It was quite a drive for only a day trip, but Bob had left early. This time being in nature wasn't for his relaxation. Going into the mountains today was for the planet. He pulled into a parking place about 9:30 a.m. Imagining the perfect spot to anchor the energy of the vision, Bob gathered his backpack from the back seat and looked through it. It would take a short hike to get there. There was water, a book in case he wanted to write, pen, and crystals wrapped in a square blue violet piece of velvet material. Assured that he had everything, he locked the car and started on his way. Bob had left the parking area when Rory pulled into a parking place a short distance from Bob's car. Jerry and Pam were with him. They had done the first clearing session here and were ready to do the second. The previous one had been a very sacred experience for them. It was like walking a path that was at the same time strange, new, familiar. The guides had explained the work to Pam. They had assured her that its purpose was beyond relieving Jerry's pain. As Pam had suspected, it was to give the ancient ones, the mission force, a tool to begin removing enough density to allow healing into the complexity that is the common biofield of the planet. With sovereignty within their multiple dimensional bodies and integration with their soul's divine self, structuring their new life to their original plans, and the activation of their missions would unfold. Jerry had been surprised and blessed with the appearance of wonderful angels during her first session. They had come in glorious rays of colors. She felt the energy within her body awaken and shift as they moved themselves over her body. Since then, she had kept a journal in which she recorded changes she experienced, like her new sense of connectedness. She also noted any old thinking or life situations that she no longer wanted to experience. With these unwanted patterns, she made new choices using Pam's help of the reality statement and the process. The intentions Pam held for the techniques to turn Jerry's decision over to her soul self and angels were reassuring. These beings, committed to Jerry's greatest good, then had permission to heal patterns that would otherwise sabotage her new choices. The process included instructions to build the energy imprints necessary for the manifestation. She was already noticing that supportive individuals were coming into her life and ideas were appearing in her mind that were helping her in her school projects as well as for the direction of her life. After the first session, Jerry said she had felt a part of her burden lift. She was excited with life for the first time in more years than she could remember. Rory had listened to Pam's conversations with Jerry, and he had done his assignments for himself. He felt as if those tools that Pam called tag matrices may give him a way to move forward in his life and in helping his clients. Rory had decided to ask Pam if she would work with the angels on his patterns. Depending on his experience, he may want to learn from her and include the work in his practice, or possibly refer others to her. What that would mean to his professional standing was unknown, and he was willing to continue to scale the mountain that Pam presented. Rory, Pam, and Jerry gathered their blankets, books, and food from the car. They walked excitedly in the direction of their spot, a sanctuary in a small valley a little distance from the parking lot. An awesome rocky outcropping stood guard on one side. There were pines, aspens, and various grasses covering the hills and the valley floor. Rocks and trees on the northern end cradled a shimmering blue lake. They stopped in the shady grove they had claimed as their own. Snuggled among the trees, they went about their preparation. Once they sat in the grove, the magnificent rocky cliff was in full view, but little else. Jerry spread her blanket in a place that felt right to her. Pam unfolded her blanket and put it on top of the food she had carried in. She then arranged her pencils and papers next to Jerry's spot. Rory took off his shoes, folded his blanket into a cushion, and positioned it close to some boulders. The blanket would cushion his back against the large rocks that served as his backrest. When she was ready, Jerry lay down, shifted her body until she was comfortable, and then closed her eyes. Pam covered her with a blanket and moved carefully to place stones and crystals around and on her body, as if creating a mosaic from some inner vision. With that done, they were ready to begin. They each honored the law of earth. They asked that Jerry's angels guard their work and this spot. They instructed their spiritual guides that only energy direct from the light of good be allowed to surround them. They asked that the gold vibration of Christ enclose and protect them. When they were each assured that their requests had been heard and honored, they smiled at each other. Pam moved to the place, put her hands on Jerry's head, and the second session began. Pam had scarcely begun the work at one end of the valley when Bob finished his hike. He had backtracked a few times to find a way to the top of this massive rocky mount, but he had had less difficulty than he had expected. Bob climbed over the last huge boulder, took a long, deep breath, and stood on the mesa. He inched toward the edge. Looking out, he saw a panorama of mountains and trees that went on as far as the eye could see. Bob was awed. The view was even more magnificent than he had remembered. He stepped back, swung the backpack to the ground, and took a drink from his water bottle. His hand moved inside the pack to locate the pouch that held his crystal. Cupping it in his hand, he walked toward the area to find the right spot. He sensed where it was, stood quietly, and closed his eyes. He breathed his love, his strength for the web of life, like colors into the rainbow, into the clear stone. Slowly bringing the vision for earth to mind, Bob called out, "I call to my father, my mother of all good. I am here to command and rededicate energy to the vision of the wholeness of the planet. I call for the consciousness of all of Earth's children, the rocks, the fire, the air, the water, the animals, plants, and birds from all parts of the planet to listen to my requests. I stand as one who has the right to call for protection and preservation of my family. My family springs from the light and from the earth. This earth, our family home for thriving and beauty, was created directly from light of good. I demand that boundaries be positioned, maintained, and strengthened to stop any invasion of any distorted, imbalanced, or outsider forms. I decree that all darkness and density be transmuted. With authority, I call for all spiritual friends of integrity to carry out this request. He became quiet and waited. Feeling an inner lifting and swelling of his heart, Bob continued. He knew his spiritual friends were with him. I ask that you begin the implementation and completion of this request on this pattern for this planet. Again, he paused, and tears flowed down his cheeks. I hold this crystal, Bob continued, cupping his crystal in his hands, and program it with the power to hold this vision. I command that its vibrations broadcast continually. I command, and these actions are now taken. Then he acknowledged those in spirit. I give thanks for your presence and ask that Earth volunteers be awakened. With his arms outstretched, Bob stood. Power radiated from his body as he turned slowly in every direction. Gradually, he came back to an awareness of his physical environment. Its beauty refreshed him. Bob sat down, brought the crystal to his lips, and blessed it. He waited for what to do next. While listening for words from his friends in spirit, Bob scanned the valley below him. The lake was glistening in the far end. Groves of quaking aspen shimmered in the breeze. The birds sang their songs. Off to one side, he noticed 3 people in a grove of trees. As he looked more closely, he realized that they were the same 3 he had seen 2 weeks ago. Struck by the synergy of this second encounter, he watched them for a while. Several times, a tall woman moved around a blanket upon which another woman lay. Then she walked to the woman's head, knelt as if in prayer, arose to sit next to the young man. Bob was touched by the scene and knew that somehow their presence was part of the sacredness of his vision. He brought his thoughts back to his task. Should he place the crystal here where he had reconfirmed his vision? And the answer flashed in his mind. No, move to the area by your backpack. He moved over to the group of rocks where his backpack lay. Digging through the dirt with his fingers, Bob created a deep hole. He very carefully placed the crystal in it and gently covered the sacred spot with soil, some sunflower seeds, wildflower seeds, and stones from the surrounding area. Smiling his satisfaction, he lifted the water bottle to his lips, took a long drink, and then watered the seeds. As Bob rose to climb down the boulders, Rory left the grove to go back to the car. They had missed some food. As Rory followed the trail through the meadow grasses, he noticed a tall, dark-haired man climbing over the rough boulders at the far side of the outcropping. Rory stopped and watched to make sure the man reached the ground safely. Rory was about 5 feet away when he saw the man's foot touch the earth. He looked up as Bob balanced himself. Their eyes met, and the dark-haired man raised his arm in a greeting. Rory moved closer and called out, "That was quite a climb. You must have been the one I saw at the top most of the day. I wondered how you'd gotten up there." Bob laughed. He spoke as he walked toward Rory. "It could be the goat in me. Actually, it wasn't too difficult. Just took a little determination. The sight was mind-boggling, well worth the effort." "I noticed you and your friends," Bob responded. "It's a great place for quiet time." "I'm on my way to the car for some food. Would you like to join us?" Rory invited. "We certainly have plenty." Bob hesitated, and then before he knew what he was saying, "I'm about ready to leave, but I'd love to visit for a few minutes." "Sure." Bob asked questions. Rory talked. Bob wondered, what was the attraction? He listened to this man. As a lawyer, Bob was trained to pay attention to words and body language. People's conversations gave clues about themselves. Bob was aware that he was gathering information as he asked questions. This meeting was unusual given the circumstances, yet he did not feel uncomfortable. As they got closer to the grove, the tall woman ran toward them. "Rory," Pam called excitedly, "we just saw a large bird circle and glide over us. It may have been a hawk or even an eagle. I'm taking it as a blessing." Then she turned to the new man with Rory. "Oh, hi, my name is Pam." The next day, Bob sat at the desk in his law office. His thoughts were miles away from his professional settings. He was back on the mountain, wearing t-shirt, jeans, and chatting comfortably with Rory. They walked, carrying the food. Pam's face came back to him. He could see her in his mind's eye, could see the way she moved, could hear the joy in her voice. There had been a stirring in his heart as she greeted him. He looked into her eyes, and then he knew she was the one. She smiled, and he did not know it then, but his life would never be the same. Jerry's notes. Wow, what an experience. The energy is still running through my body, and I'm sleeping more than usual. Pam says that it's to be expected for a few days. Sleep will give my body time to readjust to the changes in my vibrational fields. I was so blessed to see my angels feel their work. I have such gratitude for their presence in my life. Now I realize that to remember and claim my divine wholeness is my first step. Asking and hearing how to reconnect with my actual state of health, peace, and happiness will be the next. And to be at one with my divinity is the goal. I know that it is my belief in my divinity, my state of wholeness, that will bring me to wholeness. I will not stop until I am divinely living from that place.